Hi, it's Carrie. Welcome back to my channel, Crafter's Log. Today, I've just got a quick little project, I guess. I am preparing, I guess, for a quilt retreat that I'm leaving for on Thursday. And so I'm cutting up I have a bunch of 2.5 inch strips that need to be 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. So I was working at it this morning, or actually I started last night, and I'm like, there's got to be an easier way to cut this. So I went and took my Accuquilt strip cutter and placed them, took my strips and folded them back and forth on the strip cutter, and I've managed to get out my 2.5 inch squares. Tell you what, this is a game changer. I cut one strip up first and I was like, okay, I need to make sure I get this right because there's no room for error because I need so many of these. And with the kit, you only got a little bit. So let me move the camera down and I'm going to show you how I lined it up, and then we'll run it through the machine and we'll cross our fingers that these continue to work. Okay, here we go. So what I did is I just took my strips and I started along this line here. So if you're not familiar with the Accuquilt cutters, well, at least with the strip, for the strip cutter, it's only got blades. There's 4 blades, and so that way it'll make the strip. And you can move it. I mean, it's got the lines on there, so you can cut it, at angles and stuff like that. But what I done is I started over here, and I got as close to this blade over here, and I'm just trying to just get that salvage edge just on this side, the far side of the blade, and lining this up with that line. That way I've got a guide right there. And then I'll fold it over and just put a little crease just so that bend, that fold is just on the other side of that blade there. And then I'm just going to fold it again to the other side, back and forth. Now this machine will cut 6 layers, and all I do is just make sure my edges are all lined up and good to go. And then I'm going to lay the next one down. This machine will cut 6 layers of cotton fabric. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I probably should have pressed this a little bit, but I did not. Figured I'm going to be cutting that off anyways. It's going to get cut off. And I'll give you a little what I did just to make sure that these are kind of even, because you want them even. That way your squares are actually squares and not like not octagons, but polygrams, anywho, whatever that meant, that multi-sided thing that's not even on any of the sides, I guess. And this one here, I'm gonna go ahead and put the fold there just so I can see it a little bit better. And I'll show you what I do once I get these all loaded on to make sure that they are even. There we go. And so the project that I'm working on is a quilt. What did I do with it? Oh, it came from the Quilted Cow. And it is it's an ISO box. So it was a panel and the kit came with everything in it you needed except for the backing. And so now I'm cutting the strips up, and this is what I'm going to be working on. One of the projects I'm going to be working on in the quilt retreat. Now, I'm a slow sewer, so this is probably the only project I work on, unless I do have a smaller project that I'm taking with me, and I may do that one first because it's smaller. So this is what I'm cutting up here. Not sure if you can see that very well. So I'm cutting up all these pieces in here. And there's so many 2.5 inch squares, and there's so much room for error when sewing them together. At least for me, there is. It takes me a while to sew a project just because I'm still getting familiar with my machine and learning all the techniques. And I am excited. I do have a training coming up with my machine, not with my machine, but about my machine, or so I can learn more about my Janome. So I have a Janome M6, and she's a beast, and I am excited to go and take a class about the Janome. That way I can get up my skills, get a little bit more familiar with her, and start pumping out some great, ooh, that's perfect because that's right on the line there. And now I got it right in. So this was pretty much beginner's luck because I don't think I've ever ended up on the line. But I may end up taking one of these off because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this ruler here and I'm going to put it just at the top there. And then I'm going to make sure that these edges line up at the same, at the same mark. That way I know that edge is straight. And then that leads me to the next one here where this line, whoa, my gosh, don't move it, you goofball. Okay. Make sure it's lined up. That side's lined up and that side is lined up. This one looks like it could be moved over just a tad bit. But some of these may not be cut perfectly. Got to give room for a little bit of margin of error. But we're going to get it as close as possible. This one looks like we can move it just a tad bit and adjust the layers a little bit. You've got it. The ruler's not heavy to where you can go ahead and make some maneuvering and do some maneuvering. And you want to make sure that both of your creases or your edges are just slightly over those end blades. That way you make sure that you get as much use out of as many pieces as you can out of the strip. Because I think for the most part, most of my strips I need to have at least 32 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. So I guess I could have just said 2.5 inch squares, right? Because we know squares the same size on all sides. Geometry, it's a fun thing. All right, so that's how I line that up there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop this off real quick. Grab my little cutting mat because this little guy here is what holds everything in place and down. And we're just gonna send it. Oh, I did shift it. Oh, let's lift it up a little bit. Oh, she's still over there. Okay. I wanted to make sure that it was still across there. And we're gonna send this through. Now I thought of pressing all these out and cutting and laying them on the thing and then taking my grid ruler and just shoot. But I tell you what, I've been able to cut out 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 strips. I got 10 stacks, so it would have been 20 strips at least. We're gonna do this and get some of the static off of it. And then we're gonna slide it across here. And then, oops. And then as you can see, I can come down. Well, not this one here is giving me problems all morning, and I've had to cut just a little bit off right there. And then I can pretty much just come through, take off all the small pieces. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot. I've got as much. This one might be a good size piece here, so we'll save that. Yeah, oops, I used my fingers. We'll save that. It's not going to be an exact 2 by 2, 2.5 by 2.5, but it's definitely going to be usable for future projects. And so, but look at this. Look at how much, like all of that, that's all pretty much not usable unless you get really willy-nilly into something. But otherwise, that was just easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'll save this one. I'll set it aside. I know it's not going to be perfect for this project here. But again, you just stack them up and you're good to go, and I get to move on to my next one. Yes, I know that these are going to be, some of them are going to be, oops, wrong sides together, but once I still have to separate them and make them and get the other pieces cut for them. Ugh, words are hard this morning, but that was easy peasy. You can't go wrong with that. That was so nice. And oh, well, if you want to, let's just, not sure how well it'll cop up on here, but let's do this side here. We're just gonna place this over here. We got our 1, 2 and a half. 2 and a half, and then bring 1, 2 and a half. Perfect. So that's, oh, this was a game changer for this project. Now I do have the little 5-inch cube, or actually I got the 8-inch cube, and it's got where I can cut 4 of these squares out at a time, which means I can get, oh, let's see, cut 6 layers of 4. It would have taken me a little bit longer because it's smaller, but I risked it. I tried it with a strip that was actually from the project. Thank goodness it worked out, but there we go. If you've got one of these bad boys, you found an easier way to cut your 2.5-inch squares. How easy was that? If you don't have one of these machines and you have it in your budget, I say get it. One, for a couple reasons. The first one, it is very cost effective. If you are doing a bunch of strip work, you're doing your 2-inch strips, or you're into jelly rolls, jelly rugs, jelly mugs, jelly bowls, whatever, this is definitely a game changer for saving money, because you can go and you can take your yardage and cut them down into strips, which is much more budget friendly than buying the rolls already pre-cut. Now, if you're in a time crunch and you need that quick gift out, then by all means buy the jelly roll. Otherwise, save up for this machine. They've got several. I'm not affiliated, but if you're watching Accuquilt, hit me up. But anyways, just, it saves money, and eventually it does save time, because you're able to cut so much more at once. And I'm so glad that I tried it and pulled the machine out and cutting these up, because within, I would say, an hour, in between going and getting coffee, getting a drink, making sure my daughter's up for school, I was able to cut out 20 strips. And that included taking the time to make sure all my edges were right and measuring some of them, because some of them looked a little wonky. So I did have to take out the time to measure and make sure that wasn't an actual 2.5-inch square. And now I just got a little bit of this left over, and then we're going to finish cutting out the yardage, or the half yardage I have on this, and I will use this machine to cut out the yardage, and I will actually show you how I do that. Stay tuned. Okay, I have got my squares cut from my 2.5-inch strips. So now I've got this big piece here that I need to turn into 2.5-inch squares. And I'm going to use my strip cutter to do that, because my only other cube template that I have will only cut 4 at a time. 6, 24, 24, 24 is 48, 48, and 48. So it'll cut 96 squares, but it's much smaller. It is this size. And so each square is 2.5 inches, and it'll cut 6 layers. So 6, oh, it's 24. So as you can see, it's going to take 24. It only cut 24 at a time, where this will give me so much more. And maybe I'll do a total for the end versus the cutting 24 on this versus how many squares I can get out of this one. So stay tuned. Let's get set up, and we're going to do some cutting. Okay. Now, since this is going to cut 6, layers. I'm going to try to get the maximum amount out of it. So what I want, I think I want to go this. Either way, I'm going to have to do some cutting. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and make this salvage edge line up right with that. Because what's going to happen, it's not going to cut completely on this edge all the way through. And it's not going to all the way on the far end. And I hope it's all in the screen for you. Actually, let me go ahead and turn that off until we're ready. I want to make sure that I get that whole thing in there so I can show you completely. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm lining this up, the salvage edge, right on that there. So it's only going to cut until that black line. So if I bring it up a little bit, that way I can make sure at least one side is completely cut all the way through. That will help out. Because this side, since this side here is the longer, it's the folded edge, it's not really going to make that much of a big deal. Because I'm going to have to cut, I'll snip down here just past, I think it's that black. No, it goes down a little bit further. So it'll go all the way through. So yeah, it might, oh yeah, it'll cut all the way through and get my strips for me. So it does 6 layers. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold it. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to use that as my little guide real quick. Because that's where I want, let's bring it over some more. Because you know we want as much out of this fabric as possible. Oh, good gravy. I'm going to start on this end. That way the fabric's got something to hold on to and I can see a little bit better. So I'm just want my edges just on the other side of that cut, of that blade. And then I'm going to take, and then I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to place it just on the other side of the blade and fold it over. Oh, bringing my other strips with me and fold it over. That way I can make sure that it's right down on there. I think that'll work. And then as I kind of hold it, the fabric in place, I'm going to pull it out. There we go. Place it over here and you can kind of see through it. So that's helping me out a little bit, but I'm going to see I see the blade over here on the far end and I'm just going to pull it all the way up there. Make sure the blade is right just on the far side of it. That way I can pull this back over just like so. So that gives me my 3 layers right there. And I'm going to pull pull that out. And I'm going to, making sure we're all good. I do want to pull this down a little bit more because I do want it to cut through all the way on one side just to make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to put my template over here, kind of hold everything in place while I kind of roll this up. Because this isn't going to be affected. This is going to go right through the machine too with no problemo because it's not going to get cut because it's not on anything for it to cut. So I'm going to turn this back on. Send it through. Now, whether that's how you're supposed to do this or how they recommended you to do it, probably not. But I want to get the most out of this one piece of fabric as possible. bring it right around here. And you can see that piece has already come off. Sweet. And then release some of the static on it. Okay. Let's pop that over to the side. One little strippy do. And another little strippy do. And then there we go. So that gave me 2, 4, 6. There's 6, 3, 6, 9 strips easily cut. And then we're gonna do this. Once I get all these strips cut, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back and forth like I did with the strips that were already pre-cut for me, and make out those squares. And making a mess on the floor. So that's it. Easy peasy, like I said, getting your yardage if you like your strips for the jelly rolls or whatever project that you're working on. Getting your yardage or half yard, even a fat quarter. Well, I don't think a fat quarter will go fully, but depending on what you're using, this die is a must. If you're into having the cutters, they do make them where they're hand cranked, much smaller. This one's electric and it's not very loud. Anyways, let's, I'm going to get to cutting, and then I'll follow up with you as I start piecing these all together during the quilt retreat. Have a great day, y'all.